I wanted to create a video today to go along with the post that I'm going to put up about breathing and how such a simple thing like breathing and really becoming aware of how you're breathing, how your body is reacting to breathing, can change a lot about how our body's functioning during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, and for everyone, especially during this 4th trimester period, but then also postpartum. It's never too late to kind of re-tap into some things that maybe have gone ignored because you're taking care of another human, making sure that it survives day to day. Sounds like a pretty important job. You may not be thinking about your breathing, understandably. But basically, I think it'll be easier to show you some things on video. After you read through my post, you can go back to it, but this will be available for 24 hours on Insta Stories. So a few things I want to touch on. Breathing can tap into your central nervous system, and so really affects kind of how our body is reacting day to day with pain perception, anxiety, how our bowels are moving, basically helping regulate that fight or flight or parasympathetic sympathetic system, digestion, all of those good things. How changing kind of our mechanics or how our ribs are functioning can help some abdominal healing and then also help pelvic floor function. So all of that is very pertinent in the 4th trimester period. So first of all, let's talk about the changes that happen in our body that may affect breathing during pregnancy. So our body does an excellent job of accommodating a growing baby. And so as that baby kind of moves up into the abdomen, it's going to actually take up space in the ribs as well. So your ribs actually are going to expand out and then also kind of thrust forward and up. And as you can see, that already shifted my upper back. And then as your belly is growing outward, there may be a further shift back. So the reason that we care about this is because our diaphragm is our most important breathing organ or muscle, and it lives right under our ribs. So every muscle has an optimal kind of length-tension relationship to function properly. So if that diaphragm is being spread out and displaced a little bit, it may not be functioning to its maximal capacity, meaning it's not able to come down or draw down as much because there's a baby there, and because also its attachments have changed, it's gone out. So we may become chest breathers. So these muscles up here are supposed to just be helpers in breathing. They're not supposed to do the majority of the job. But during pregnancy, we may be kind of shallow breathers. So a lot of this shortness of breath is really common during pregnancy, obviously because of the changes that are happening, but we want to reverse that after the baby has been born so that we can go back to functioning appropriately. For women that haven't had a baby or maybe had a baby a long time ago, we also tend to be chest breathers just because we tend to kind of suck in. So I think there's so many women that have never really let their stomachs go, or are constantly sucking in here. So what this does, it's kind of providing this like kink in our canister or our chain. So if we think about the abdominal core as a canister with diaphragm at the top and pelvic floor at the bottom, we need to be able to regulate breath and pressure up and down like this. But if we're constantly sucking in here, that's going to kind of affect how that pressure is modulated up and down. Okay, so also just working on letting our abdominals go to let our diaphragm, our pelvic floor, and our lower core really support from the bottom rather than kinking off in the middle here. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is just how we can kind of tap in and be mindful of normal breathing. So when I say normal breathing, I mean not chest breathing. So if you want to put your hands right around your ribs, this is a good way to think about 3-dimensional breath. So as you inhale, you're going to fill up the sides, the front and back, then your belly, then your pelvic floor. What we're doing is keeping our chest and our shoulders quiet, okay? So it's really a diaphragmatic breath and a belly breath and a pelvic floor breath, not just belly breathing here and not just here, but all of those things to really fill up and then release. So as you inhale, you should feel all those areas fill up and even your pelvic floor expand a little bit. And as you exhale, You can allow your pelvic floor and your abdominals to kind of retract back. If you're feeling saucy, you can provide a little pelvic floor contraction and lower abdominal contraction, and we're just supporting from the bottom up, okay? So this is just a way to kind of tap back in to how your body should be breathing to calm down the nervous system, to regulate all those functions we talked about. And then to also provide a kind of brain to body connection of what our abdominals should be doing now. They may be a little bit confused about where they are in space because the space has been taken up by a baby. Now that that's gone, we may feel just a little bit off center, like we don't have a lot of control of our abdominals, but really they just need a re-education and a little bit of controlled loading, meaning let's use them a little bit. And the same thing with our pelvic floor. Let's start to wake it up and use it a little bit during this time. So our whole core system, now moving on to kind of how this will heal our abdominals and our pelvic floor, should work in synergy. It works best in synergy when we can kind of appropriately align some things. Mind you, this is best to do just when you're practicing. So when you're practicing with breathing to heal the abdominals and take some pressure off of the pelvic floor, this isn't necessary for everything that you do in life. We're trying to build a habit. It's just like when you practice good form before you play a sport, you're not thinking about that good form while you play the sport. We're practicing for everyday life. So don't get too caught up in, oh my gosh, I need to do this, while I'm cooking dinner and taking my kid out of the stroller. Just practice it on your own a little bit, and it will become more natural. Don't stress about it. So this whole system, up and down. This whole system is a system of pressures and tension, okay? So what that means are there should be good tension in our core system being our diaphragm. So there's tension as it's attaching to the ribs. Then our abdominal wall, so we have the six-pack muscles that run up and down, some obliques that kind of wrap around in different directions, and then our deep transverse abdominis, that's the deepest layer, and it is the lowest, attaches to our pubic bone as well, and it wraps around like a corset. So those deep muscles, actually, when they contract, they just compress. They don't move any body part. They just compress and support. And those muscles should be turning on right before a movement, not during a movement. Good news is the most pressure in our body is right before a movement. So we're trying to re-educate those muscles to work a little bit when they should be right before a movement. The abdominal wall that may be separated here, we also want to just provide a little support so that there isn't excessive pressure as we're just trying to heal. Because separation is normal and we want to just provide a healing environment and not worry about it too much during these first couple weeks. We're just not going to provide pressure on an area that may be a little vulnerable right now as it heals. There's also, so that's supposed to provide some tension. The abdominal wall here should also provide tension so that the breath and inner abdominal pressure can move up and down. So if something's healing, it may not be the best tension that we've ever created. So we just want to release some of the pressure, right? So if we're not able to provide like a good wall of tension here, then that pressure may be coming out or having a little doming. So instead of worrying about that, let's just release some pressure by not holding our breath through things, giving us some muscular support through the lower abdominals, the pelvic floor, the glutes, and really being your own advocate that if you see some doming, this activity may be a little too much too soon for you right now. Try a different strategy, and we'll walk through that a little bit. The next area of tension that your body should be able to create is your pelvic floor. So just like a trampoline, it has multiple attachments all around kind of in a circle of your pelvis. And if there's good tension there, just like a trampoline, it should be able to go down before it springs back up, okay? So if we are working on our tension relationship to the pressure relationship, and our body is here with our ribs kind of up, our back posterior and our hips forward, then pressure can't move very well up and down. There may be a little bit of excess pressure forward. So we just want to think about stacking our ribs over our pelvis. So if you pull in your lower belly a little bit, bring your ribs forward, my ribs are then stacked over my pelvis, and the diaphragm and the pelvic floor can work to go up and down as you breathe in and out. So as you breathe in, everything should descend, and as you breathe out, everything should naturally recoil. Again, it's important to be able to completely relax this area where women tend to suck in to allow that to happen. So a way that you can practice this breathing is on your back. So if you have some support on your back, we're not thinking about alignment in ribs, just kind of look up and see, are my ribs pointed towards the sky, or can I kind of point them down towards my pelvis a little bit? The other way that I like to do this is in sitting, so you can really ground your feet, point toes forward, focus on where your bottom's sitting, put some hands on the ribs or hands on the chest and the belly, and work on that three-dimensional breathing. Or standing up and kind of putting your hands here. So this helps me be able to relax my belly. And I don't know why, maybe it's because you provide a little bit of external support, then your body doesn't feel like it has to grip and hold on. But being able to fully relax your belly, fully relax your pelvic floor in a deep breath, and then as you exhale, work on first contract your pelvic floor, then contract your transverse abdominis. That's gonna help support, relieve the pressure up so that we're not bearing down and putting pressure on our healing abdominals. So I kind of wrote everything about this in the post. This is a really long video, I was not planning on this, but our basic take home is work on breathing out and deeply, okay? Ribs, belly, pelvic floor to relax, help that central nervous system. And then as you exhale, play around with what works for you of, can you get a little bit of pelvic floor lift as you exhale? Can you get a little bit of pulling in of the lower abdominals as you exhale? And what that's gonna do is help relieve pressure up and out of your mouth. So we're exhaling with effort instead of putting pressure on our healing abdominals or down onto our pelvic floor. We would be adding pressure down onto our pelvic floor or out through our healing abdominals. It's a strategy that your body chooses, so it's going to be different for everyone. When we hold our breath, when you hear yourself like grunt in effort, and a big one is kind of this like sit-up motion. So tomorrow I'm going to go through just some simple techniques of daily movement in that first couple weeks of postpartum, just to support your body's healing abdominal wall and pelvic floor.